KTN News Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. It is Tuesday, the 15th day of December 2015. This is KTN Prime. Ahmed Darwesh was one of Kenya's most accomplished and most experienced Swahili news anchors and editors. Also a news editor here at KTN, Darwesh, or Daru as we fondly refer to him, was also a celebrated Swahili poet and will be remembered across many living rooms across the country for his suave, calm and professional delivery of our Swahili news bulletin, KTN Leo. Tonight, Kenya and East Africa mourns a fallen scribe. The country has bid farewell to not only an impeccable journalist who helped revolutionize Swahili news in the region, but also a great human being, an ever-smiling, honest colleague, a family man, and a true gentleman. Tonight, Kenya mourns Ahmed Darwesh. This is KTN News. I'm Ben Kitili. The top stories tonight. Rest in peace, comrade. KTN's Ahmed Darwesh climbs the golden stairs.
He was my support, my rock, my everything.
Ahmed Darwesh alikuwa rafiki yetu, alikuwa ndugu yetu wa karibu.
Colleagues, viewers and leaders paid tribute to KTN's iconic news anchor.
The WTO should continue to assist countries in undertaking domestic structural reforms.
Historic World Trade Organization conference begins in Nairobi.
Kaingia hapo kwa mboma ipo nikakuta huyo mama amelala na amekatakatwa, lakini sisi hatukujua nini lilifanyika.
And son and grandson hacked coupled to pieces of a land dispute in Embu County. It is a day of sorrow here at the Standard Group as we mourn the death of one of our own. The KTN Swahili news anchor and editor Ahmed Darwesh has been battling diabetes for a long time and finally gave up the fight last night. Darwesh will be remembered not just by KTN and the Standard Group staff, but indeed the entire media fraternity from his talent, his prowess in the Swahili language and culture, and his character of kindness and humility. This is how we remember Daru.
Ni furaha iliyoje kuweza kujiunga nawe mtazamaji mteule sana wakati kama huu papa hapa kwenye taarifa za KTN leo chaguo lako. Mie ni Ahmed Darwesh.
For close to 15 years, Ahmed Darwesh graced our TV screens.
Mmoja ameuawa mjini Kitale baada ya kufumaniwa.
His warm spirit luring the masses to invite him to their living rooms to deliver the news. This he did with authority and talent.
Tumechukua hivi sasa, lakini kabla yote hayo
talent that he was not self in the industry.
Ahmed Darwesh amenifunza mengi. Alinipokea nikitoka upande wa radio kuingia TV hapa KTN, na alinifunza mambo mingi sana, hasa kuambatana na mambo ya namna ya kuripoti na vipi nafaa kujiwasilisha kwenye chombo cha habari, kwa mfano kwenye runinga.
Matambo, ukiweza kusaidia mtu msaidie, haina gharama. Lakini kumbuka, katika huu ulingo una wengi ambao wanaogopa ukinzani kutoka kwa wengine. Usiwasikilize. Na kumbuka, huo ndo usia wake wa kwanza Ahmed Darwesh alionipatia tarehe 19 mwezi wa 12 mwaka 2013 nilipoingia KTN.
I don't know how to describe what I feel. It's extremely hard, but I know God will give us the strength.
Darwesh was a KTN news editor on the Swahili desk, as well as a news anchor who hosted KTN Leo and Mandhari ya Wiki.
Dunia ina mambo wallahi tena. Na vijimambo, mambo na vijimambo.
When he was not all serious with the day's news, Darwesh, or Daru, as he was fondly referred by friends and colleagues, was a humorous man.
Barabara kabisa basi natumai.
Never a dull moment with Daru.
Muda mrefu wa kungoja ngoja na hali ya ati nikitumai basi kwamba popote ulipo uko tayari kutupokea matangazo yetu ya moja kwa moja ambayo yatakuwa yakikujia hapa kwenye
Darwesh passed on suddenly on Monday, the 14th of December 2015. He was diabetic and suffered complications while at his house.
Naam, ni kama mlivyoambiwa ndugu yetu ameweza kutuacha hapo jana. Tulikuwa na wasiwasi, tulikuwa tunajua kwa wapi apokee simu. So tukajaribu juu chini, lakini tulimpata kwa nyumba. Ashafariki, alikuwa amekalia kochi.
I'll just have to say that the lion has taken a bow so soon.
The death of the veteran journalist comes as a big blow to the media industry in the country. Journalists and media personalities from across the media stations have been pouring out their memories of Darwesh, describing his legacy as well as sending out messages of condolences.
I have known Darwesh since 2005. I remember as a reporter working in NTV. He was a reporter here at KTN, and we used to meet in the field, and we were very good friends. We would exchange notes, we would deliberate on story.
Na nakumbuka majuma matatu aliweza kunipigia simu, akawa ananiuliza kuhusu changamoto ninazopitia katika wanahabari, hususan redio na runinga, maana kwa anaandika makala fulani. Alinichekesha sana kwa taarifa alizonipa kuhusu masaibu aliyopitia mwenyewe akiwa mwanahabari.
Tumempoteza mdau katika dini, mdau katika kazi, mdau katika lugha ya Kiswahili. Kwa hivyo cha msingi ni kumwombea kila la kheri, na vile vile iwe kama kumbukumbu kwetu, kwani ndio kama hivyo ni safari ambayo kila mtu ataipitia.
The curtains of Darwesh's life close at a youthful age of 38 years. He leaves behind a young family of his wife and 3 children. May Allah rest his soul in peace.
Tonight, Kenya laid to rest one of our most iconic sons. Ahmed Darwesh will only be in your living rooms in memory. A sudden death robbed the nation of Darwesh last night in his Nairobi house, leaving his family, colleagues and ardent fans as well as viewers in shock. KTN's Francis Ontomwa covered Daru's last journey in the coastal city of Mombasa and now reports.
The plane carrying the remains of the late Ahmed Darwesh touched down at the Moi International Airport, Mombasa at exactly 11:25 a.m. And here, friends and relatives who had been waiting for several hours, including Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho and County Commissioner Nelson Marwa, will emerge to embrace the remains of a man that has graced the TV screens in millions of living rooms for over a decade. A man largely described as humble, visionary, and dedicated to duty. Emotions will then run high as close kin broke down in tears.
Tulipigiwa simu tu tukaambiwa sisi kaka yenu bana Nairobi amekwenda kwa checking, kufika hospitali kule kwa bahati mbaya mabati mzuri, alipomaliziwa checking ile na ndio hapo akatuacha. Tumepigwa na shock mpaka dakika hatujui ilikuwa kwa vipi ama ilikuwa kwa vipi, lakini yote atomwachia Mwenyezi Mungu. Sisi kwa tunampenda, lakini Mwenyezi Mungu alikuwa anampenda zaidi.
From Moi International Airport, a huge procession will begin the journey to his Mtopanga home in Kisauni. A procession that will for some time bring Mombasa town to a standstill. Bystanders will dot the streets of the city as some wave to the convoy with messages of goodbye Darwesh coming in plenty. And on arrival at Mtopanga, things will heat up even more as mothers and close neighbors took a moment to reflect on the life and times of the late Darwesh. This was his last journey to a place he called home. Everyone jostled for the opportunity to carry his remains. Islamic tunes will solemnize the occasion, something that will trigger more and more tears. Around 3 p.m. Kenyan time from Topanga, his body was taken to Masjid Memon for prayers, a special prayer that will last for about an hour, and then the final match will begin. A match that will last for about 5 minutes to his final resting place at the Kikowani Cemetery. From dust to dust, his remains were lowered into the grave, as many watched in disbelief, as Darwesh finally coined his last script on earth.
We can only do more in terms of what we have been doing, because he leaves a heavy burden on our shoulders to try and emulate the path that he set out for us, to try and do all the things that Darwesh endeavored to do, because he was, as I said, a diligent employee. He's someone who wanted things to work the right way.
Ni kielelezo chema na atasalia miongoni mwetu, na kile ambacho ametuachia pale Standard Group, KTN, familia nzima yani ya KTN News, ni mambo ambayo nitasema yanahitaji tuyachukue, tuyaendelee nayo, na iwe ndio kama tamaduni ya KTN, na inshallah katika siku zijazo.
Born and brought up in Mombasa in 1977, Darwesh's life has been described by those who knew him as inspirational and well-lived. May Allah rest his soul in eternal peace. Francis Ontomwa, KTN News, Mombasa.
It has been a day of pain and sorrow here at the Standard Group newsroom, as his colleagues tried to come to terms with Daru's death. It was also a day of tribute, as many people, especially on social media, paid tribute. His fans as well as viewers of KTN paid tribute to Ahmed Darwesh. Even political leaders sent their messages of condolence. Let's take a look at some of them. Deputy President William Ruto led Kenyans in paying tribute to Darwesh, saying Darwesh was a great journalist. He graced our screens with a rare smile that made KTN Leo even more interesting to watch. Rest in peace. Another one here from Chief Justice Dr. William Mutunga saying, quoting the Quran, saying in Arabic, "We surely belong to Allah, and to Him we shall return." There was also a message of tribute and condolence from the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi. Says, in this sad world of ours, sorrow comes to all, and particularly with the loss of a pillar of Kiswahili news, it comes with painful agony. Justin Muturi also said, our country has lost a gentleman. We stand with you. I will miss that voice tonight as I watch KTN 7 o'clock news. There was also a message of condolence and tribute from former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, who said, my deepest heartfelt condolences to the family of Ahmed Darwesh. We will surely miss your presence. Another one here from Najib Balala, the Tourism Cabinet Secretary and former Member of Parliament of Mvita in Nairobi, said he was modest in his professional work and knew how to do his work well, winning admiration from all and sundry. Those are some of the tribute and message of condolences from his fans. Now this is a Standard Group tribute to Darwesh. The Standard Group shares the grief of the family, relatives and friends of KTN News anchor Ahmed Darwesh, who died yesterday of illness. Darwesh was a committed journalist who performed his duties diligently. For the 10 years of his association with the group, he was a crucial cog in the wheel that produced news and current affairs content for dissemination in our various platforms. He exemplified humility and was literally liked by his seniors and colleagues who worked with him closely on a day-to-day basis. Darwesh took his assignments with zeal and went the extra mile, always consulting on how to better his presentation and storytelling skills. The Standard Group Limited editorial director Joe Odindo has said that in the newsroom, Darwesh was a reporter, an anchor, editor, mentor and teacher of very many of his colleagues. He was also a devout Muslim who would find time within the busy newsroom schedule to pray. And despite his fame and celebrity status, he was admired by all and sundry because of his unassuming mind and smile. By the time of his untimely death, he was synonymous with KTN product and riveting interviewing skills. Death has robbed us of one of our most committed journalists and will surely and dearly miss him. May Allah rest his soul in eternal peace. That it is not our traditional big question. We are asking you to send your messages of condolence and tributes to Ahmed Darwesh. Send them to the number 22155. You can also join that conversation. Send the tributes via social media on Twitter on hashtag RIP Ahmed Darwesh. Rest in peace, Ahmed Darwesh. Another news, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto will contest the 2017 general election under a newly crafted Jubilee party. The party will be launched in March next year. President Uhuru and Deputy William Ruto rallied their troops to back the formation of the party, saying it is the ideal cure of ethnic balkanization, bedeviling the country's politics.
The new look vessel for the presidential pair of Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto for the 2017 general elections will have clasped hands as its symbol, with the slogan being "Tuko Pamoja," a loose translation of "We stand together." The Jubilee Party shall maintain red and yellow as its main colors. The merger to be crystallized next year, March, when the Jubilee Party will be officially unveiled, swallowing Ruto's the United Republican Party, URP, symbolized by a horn, and Uhuru's the National Alliance, whose symbol is a dove. Other affiliate parties will also be consumed in the merger. The unification of Jubilee Alliance parties endorsed at a meeting in State House, where the president and his deputy were critical of those opposed to the merger.
Today we have an opportunity to reintroduce mature politics into Kenya. Today we have an opportunity to introduce issue-based politics into our society.
The best way to bring Kenya together is to start with bringing a political movement that brings all the communities of Kenya from all regions together. The only way that we will get this country in one accord.
Initially, Jubilee's National Executive Committee had planned to hold a national delegates meeting at Kasarani on the 18th of December to endorse the unification and formation of the Jubilee Party. But the plans were frozen when cracks emerged on forging the merger. A case is before the political parties dispute tribunal to stop the folding up of the Jubilee parties.
It is not always that you have a president and a deputy president who are friends. This is a convergence of history. So we must use this moment. We must use this moment because it is unique. We must use this moment because it is unique for us to unite Kenya.
Politics of this country has always been polarized and based on ethnicity. That you can be friends, but you cannot belong to the same party because you belong to two different communities.
In rallying their supporters behind the merger of Jubilee Alliance Party, the Jubilee leadership say the move endeavors to rid the nation of the culture of ethnic balkanization and polarization.
You don't want to form the government. You want to go there, cook a small thing, and then beg. Bargaining power. You go sit there, and then now you wait for the government to be formed, and then you come knocking, or please, what will you get? So mutapata makombo, the leftovers. Because the people forming the government must satisfy themselves first. So what we are saying here is, instead of you going to the bush so that you can come and beg tomorrow, let us form the government here together.
We are being driven by the issues that are of concern to our people, as opposed to our tribes. Because we cannot eat our tribes, but we can deal with the issues that are.
Samogina, KTN News.
Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga still maintains he did not break any law by declining to appear before the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission over the multi-billion shilling Eurobond saga. Raila, in an exclusive interview, said he is a whistleblower and does not have answers but questions. when our government spent over 140 billion shillings, which was part of the 250 billion shillings borrowed from the international market. He spoke to Dalton Kawesa of KTN News affiliate station in Uganda, NBS, who started by asking him the genesis of the controversial Eurobond saga.
You see, the government first, before they went to the financial market, they changed the laws here. Last year in May, they went and brought an amendment to the Public Finance Management Act to allow them to open an offshore account. This was done. They also went on to pay a very controversial debt of the Anglo-leasing scandal, so that they could then have a clean bill of health. Then they went there and they appointed financial transaction advisors. One is JP Morgan, the other one is Barclays Bank, the other one is Standard Bank, and the fourth one, who was sneaked in at the last minute, is the Bank of Qatar. So now, the first floating, they raised $2 billion on the 24th of June last year. Out of that amount of money, in July, they paid $600 million syndicated loan, which had accrued at that time. They went on to raise more money. In November, they had then raised another $750 million. So it is 2.75 billion in total money that they raised in the Eurobond market. According to them, this money came into the country, and then they say that it was then forwarded to line ministries. One of the major recipients of that money is Ministry of Planning, the other one is Ministry of Devolution. That money was meant for infrastructure development. That when the government goes to borrow money outside, by law, by constitution, they cannot use that money for recurrent purposes. It can only be used for infrastructural development. So the question we've been asking them is, show us the projects that were funded using this money. They cannot. The other large recipients are ministries which do not deal with infrastructure, like Ministry of Planning.
Eurobond is something that has captivated everyone, even in Uganda. Eurobond question, don't you think you would have shared vital information if you had appeared before the Ethics Committee?
I was invited by the EACC, that is Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, to go and provide information. I did tell them that I don't have information. What I have are questions. I've asked questions, and I forwarded to them copies of my correspondence with the minister, and said that answers are with the government, not with me. Therefore, my going before them is a waste of time. So I said that we are ready to meet whatever consequences, because we are not breaking the law. As a whistleblower, you are protected by the law. So I say that you are turning your attention to the wrong targets. A whistleblower is not a criminal, so I cannot be made a criminal merely because I have questioned the expenditure by the government.
So tonight, Kenya laid to rest one of our most iconic sons in KTN news anchor and editor Ahmed Darwesh, and we were asking you on our big question to what is your message of condolence to Ahmed Darwesh. Let me sample a number of them. And Evelyn Ogutu on Twitter says, I am still shocked. His smile was priceless. A great gentleman with a big heart. I will miss him. Yatich Zeph also says it's a big loss for Kenya. We've lost one of our finest journalists. Another one here from Patrick Rono says, may your soul rest in peace. We will surely miss you. Wanjiru Gituku, may the Lord see the friends and family of Darwesh. I cannot imagine that smile is gone. Rest in peace, you're a hero. And Jimmy Akiba says, may Allah give his family strength and courage to bear the loss. Keep the messages of condolence coming to the number 22155. The Twitter hashtag is RIP Chief Executive Officer of the Standard Group Limited, Sam Sholei, and the management have joined the staff and colleagues of Ahmed Darwesh in wishing the family and friends, sending them the message of condolence. Sholei has said that Ahmed Darwesh was a hard-working and humble worker here for the Standard Group Limited. He also said that Darwesh was a great veteran of the broadcast industry, which Kenya has lost. We'll take a quick break here on KTN Prime. Many thanks for staying with us. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to KTN Prime. To a shocking story in the county of Embu. Now, a couple in Embu County was hacked to death by their son and grandson in a dispute over land. The two suspects were cornered by the Embu police with a blood-soaked machete still in their hands minutes after the attack.
The brutal hacking to death of an elderly couple has left Kianganari village in Embu in utter shock. This is after it emerged that the alleged assailants were the couple's son and grandson following a land dispute.
Shinda ni shamba tu, inaonekana shinda hii, kuko na shinda ya shamba kidogo, na ndiposa mzee huyo akapoteza maisha.
Mbugu Muragara, aged 98 years old, and his 53-year-old wife Jen Joki were reportedly attacked at their home at around 8:30 by the two. Screams from the Muragara's home caught the attention of neighbors. Alarmed, they rushed over to help, only to be met by the two suspects, who at the time were armed with blood-soaked machetes.
Tulisikia nduru, alafu tukakuja hapa. Mimi nilikuwa wa tano hivi kufika hapa, nikakuta mzee hapo amerara. Nikaingia hapo kwa mboma hapo, nikakuta huyo mama amerara na amekatakatwa.
It is alleged that Timothy Kamau, aged 50, and his son Anthony Mungendi, aged 25 years, had repeatedly issued death threats to the elderly couple. If witness accounts are anything to go by, they had finally made up their minds to make good their threats.
Mzee alipatikana nje ya boma akiwa anakula chakula ya jioni, na bibi yake naye alikuwa amekatiwa wakati alikuwa jikoni. Polisi walifika pale na uchunguzi ukaanza, na ndipoza kupatikana ya kwamba wanayokuwa shukiwa kuhusika ni kijana ya hiyo mzee mmoja na mjukuu mmoja.
Embu East OCPD Njoroge Mbugwa confirmed the incident, further revealing that so brutal was the attack that the two bodies had been decapitated. The land dispute is said to have escalated when the old man remarried following his first wife's death. The OCPD said police arrived at the scene and after a search found the two of them hiding in an adjacent house, weapons in hand. Trix Ingado, KTN News.
You're watching KTN Prime. Many thanks for staying with us on this day that the WTO Ministerial Conference kicked off here in Nairobi, and KTN's Joy Doreen Bira will be giving us the latest on that particular conference. Joy Doreen.
Well, thanks a lot, Ben Kitili. And let me start by saying it's really sad that we had to lose a colleague of ours, that is Ahmed Darwesh. Very terrible news, but hopefully God can comfort the family, friends and loved ones that he's left behind. And we here at work, we're surely gonna miss him. So may God rest his soul in eternal peace. Yes, the World Trade Organization is happening in Kenya, and it did kick off officially today, opened by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, who did mention a number of issues that he thinks need to be tackled for developing countries to have fair play when it comes to trade with developed countries. And in studio with me now, to further put this into perspective for us, we're joined by Dr. Stephen Ndungu Karau, who is the permanent representative to the United Nations, WTO, and other international organizations. He's going to be talking to us about what exactly WTO is, because from where he sits in Geneva, that is, He's going to try to demystify what WTO is and how developing countries can benefit from it, and all about the export competition, Ben. So we'll take a break and we'll be back to speak to Dr.
Tweet of the day in association with London Distillers Kenya Limited.
You're watching KTN, and we are following every beat of what's happening at the World Trade Organization 10th Ministerial Conference that kicked off today officially. And in studio with me to now demystify this 10th Ministerial Conference and what the package is all about, what the talks are all about, we are now joined by Ambassador Dr. Stephen Ndungu Karau, who is the permanent representative to the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and other international organizations in Geneva, and he joins us live here in studio. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador. I'll start by asking, there's been a lot of talk, even within our own media houses about the World Trade Organization, but just to help us get a clear understanding of it, help us demystify what this 10th Ministerial Conference is all about.
Thank you, Doreen, and thank you for inviting me to the studio tonight. Perhaps before I go on very far, let me also join in expressing my condolences for the loss of such a beloved colleague, Ahmed Darwesh. I join you all in mourning him, and we ask God to rest his soul in eternal peace. As for the WTO, I welcome the subject, and indeed I would like to demystify a few things. First of all, WTO is one of the many international organizations that are based in Geneva. It's not a UN organization per se, but it's an international organization which is an IGO, is an intergovernmental organization. Governments become members. Like Kenya government became a member in 1964, which was GATT that time, which eventually evolved to become the WTO, founded in Marrakesh, Morocco in 1995. So the UN itself has a membership of around 192, 93. The WTO at the moment has 162. We are hoping in Nairobi to get 2 new members, the Republic of Liberia and the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So we are going to become 164 members. You become a member through a very vigorous process that we call accession. And it's voluntary, but you have to go all the mile. You must meet all the requirements that the other members demand. And in fact, all the other members have a right to interview you. For some countries, it takes as long as 20 years to become a member. Right. So it's not an easy process. So there must be a premier. Why do countries want to join? And the reason why countries would like to join is the WTO is the premier institution that sets rules and regulations that govern international trade. So in a way, it's like a parliamentary system, you might say. But we do not make rules through debates and so on. We make them through negotiations and through a lot of discussions in committee rooms, and we pass decisions by consensus.
All right, so speaking of negotiations, who exactly are the negotiators in this whole package, or in this whole talks and discussions and deliberations that are ongoing?
Beautiful. Now, look at it this way. We don't want to oversimplify trade. Trade is a very complex subject. It's a subject that has caused wars, so it's very intricate and very delicate. So we have negotiators at 2 levels. We have what you'd call technical staff or technical negotiators, and then we have the leaders who are now the ambassadors that are sent by their respective governments to represent their governments in Geneva, which is the headquarters of WTO. And these two sets form the negotiators in Geneva. They meet in committee rooms. They meet in a setup just like a parliament, but we don't stand to argue and to do things. You just put in your case, and then you are listened by others. If they like what you say, they support, and it becomes owned by everybody, and it's eventually passed and agreed on as an agreement.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So today we did see a number of countries as well coming forward, or at least convening, represented by different delegates, some of them trade ministers and some of them ambassadors. And KTN's Abi Agina has been following that opening session for us today, and he did manage to speak to a number of people about what exactly transpired at the opening session of the WTO 10th Ministerial Conference, and he brings us a report about it.
Converged for the 10th World Trade Organization Conference in Nairobi. The focus for Africa was on getting a fair share of trade.
The WTO should continue to assist countries in undertaking domestic structural reforms aimed at modernization, diversification, and improvement of business environments.
We are optimistic that this Council meeting is poised to impact global trade, to strengthen the rule-based multilateral trading system, to ensure that the less developed nations of the world are given a better deal by removal of barriers which will foster a larger percentage of global trade.
The meeting comes amidst mounting criticism of the World Trade Organization for failing to honor some of its commitments, which include eliminating barriers to trade.
The slow progress in concluding the Doha round has given impetus to a multiplicity of mega free trade agreements. This does not augur well for an open and transparent, all-inclusive and rule-based multilateral trading system.
Presence reflects the great importance that Africa places on its role as host of MC10 and its commitment to the multilateral trading system.
Kenya's Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, Ambassador Amina Mohamed, indicated that Kenya would be eyeing for trade facilitation for African countries, which is currently tilted in favor of developed countries.
We should be inspired to lift our sights, to reach further, to aim higher, and to use trade for the common good.
Africa was sort of seen as the dark continent, and a story that has continued to change, and recent reports by Bloomberg show that Africa is indeed the next growth frontier for the world.
According to President Kenyatta, the current trade imbalances are worrying and require speedy interventions to ensure smooth takeoff of African nations. Africa is currently deemed as the next frontier for growth, with global growth having slowed down in most developed countries. Africa has achieved significant strides, with foreign direct investments growing 600% from $9 billion to $58 billion in just 10 years. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD Secretary General Dr. Muhisa Kitui, Africa must address the yawning unemployment levels that hold back the region from attaining sustainable growth.
The WTO in the city of Doha to make trade contribute in its way to the pursuit of inclusive prosperity by the reduction of extreme poverty.
From the WTO conference, Kenya has its eyes set on growing its trade volumes by attaining better trade facilitation, as well as ensuring the reduction of agricultural subsidies in the Western world. Abi Agina, reporting for KTN News in Nairobi.
And that's what happened during the opening session of the WTO 10th Ministerial Conference there. It happened in Nairobi, which is the first country on the African Kenya is the first country on the African continent to host this ministerial conference. But, you know, the bigger question here is why exactly are we bringing it to Africa or to Kenya in particular? And what is it that we are building? And I have Dr. Stephen Ndung'u Karal, who is the permanent representative to the United Nations, WTO, and other international organizations in Geneva. He's here with us. So, Ambassador, what is it that we are building for the next 3 days, and what is it that we are looking forward to the team that are holding these deliberations delivering or declaring on Friday?
Okay, thank you once again, Doreen. What we are watching or seeing in Nairobi is a culmination of 2 years of work. The top organ of the WTO is the group of ministers, the trade ministers, who meet to accent and to give a final touch to the work of 2 years and also spell the future, what should be done in the next 2 years. Usually that's done in the form of a ministerial declaration. That's what we would be hoping for in Nairobi. What the ministerial declaration will say is, in part one, what has happened, a history of WTO in the last 2 years, and in this particular year we have the bonus of the 20th anniversary of the WTO, so a bit of that can be put in. Then you have part two, which is the technical part that you are touching on. I think you mentioned the export competition, wondering what it is a part of the things that we'll be looking for to achieve in the agricultural sector. And indeed, you heard His Excellency the President talk about domestic support, about subsidies. Export competition is also another form of subsidies. Developed countries subsidize their exports such that our exports are not able to compete when they get into the world stage. The third part is what would spell the work that would be done in the next 2 years before the next ministerial. We are very happy it's happening in Nairobi. It's not an easy process to just get selected. It's usually a competitive process, and we are very happy that the WTO family chose Nairobi to be their place for the meeting, their venue for the meeting this particular year. So we're looking forward to the final product of the meeting. We hope it will be a ministerial declaration outlining, as I have said, the various parts of the expectation. That would be the culmination and a good result.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Ndung'u Karal, permanent representative to the UN, WTO, and other international organizations in Geneva, speaking to us here about the WTO 10th Ministerial Conference that's kicked off in Nairobi, Kenya, and it's going to be ongoing until the 18th of December 2015. And well, you're watching KTN News, but Foreign Affairs Minister Amina Mohammed, who is also the new chair of the World Trade Organization, has insisted that the ongoing World Trade Organization Ministerial Summit in Nairobi must arrive with resolutions that offer value to African countries who for years have suffered from skewed trade agreements that have locked out African countries from accessing markets in more industrialized nations. Phil Kitani has more.
You said at the beginning that this
Ministers meeting this week should decide whether the World Trade Organization continue to negotiate major trade deals that have proven elusive or find it a more modest mandate like arbitrating trade rows. The Geneva-based WTO, which has more than 160 members, has been trying and largely failing to agree on a worldwide package of trade reforms since a meeting in Doha in 2001 has an ambitious plan for knocking down trade barriers.
If we have a successful ministerial, it will change because we will have reinvigorated, we will have renewed the organization, we hopefully will have modernized it, depending on how many issues we take to Geneva.
Amina Mohammed insists that the goals of the Nairobi meeting is to determine how the WTO moves forward after years of talks without a major success. She says that a decision clearly needs to be made in Nairobi on what to do with an organization which has sat while African countries suffered in the hands of the more developed nations.
So the decision that we'll have to make as ministers is, what do we do with this organization, right? That was very successful in Bali, but took a long time to get to Bali. It took a long time to get to Bali. And it's taken us 2 years, right, to get almost nothing in place, even with what we agreed in Bali, right? It has, you know, I mean, we've all been making a lot of effort to urge, to plead, to cajole, you know, to get work done.
She insisted that failure to reach a major trade deal, which must be unanimously passed, will prove that the negotiation function of the WTO is broken, and in the instant, members will need to fix it, choose a new way of negotiating, or agree to let the WTO focus on dispute settlement, trade policy, and the other areas that do not need a negotiation element.
That there is still a real will among the membership to deliver meaningful outcomes, particularly for the least developed countries and for Africa.
The Bali round of talks held 2 years ago was seen as a more successful, resulting in several agreements, including one to standardize and streamline custom procedures. But this has yet to be adopted by many countries. The United Nations has mooted an idea of scrapping the existing round of WTO negotiations, among them the controversial Doha round, in favor of new talks. But others, led by India, have rejected this motion, saying developing nations are growing wary of the game of musical chairs.
We have an agreement, right, that has been signed, and it has been ratified by about 57 countries. Right? Why is it so difficult to get the other, 51 countries? We already passed the halfway mark. Okay, so a decision will clearly need to be made here in Nairobi as to what we need to do with this organization.
Philip Keitany, KTN Business.
And talk on agricultural subsidies started in 2001 as developing nations sought a solution to the trade distortions introduced by subsidies in rich economies like the US and the European Union. But not much headway has been made since, as both sides dug their heels, and now for the 14th year, the talks are back on the table. Adelaide Chengole tells us more.
Africa is the second largest continent in the world, big enough to fit the US, India and China, and still leave room to spare. The continent is also home to 1 billion people, most of whom rely on agriculture for their daily livelihood. Despite this, the continent only contributes a paltry 6.7% of world food production, trailing much smaller peers like North America and Europe. Part of the challenge has been occasioned by inefficient land use in the continent, wrong seed choices, reliance on rain-fed agriculture, and bad storage. But a significant challenge has been brought about by trade distortions introduced by some of the Western countries that cut production costs in those countries and leaves African produce unable to compete in the market.
Africa's farmers simply cannot compete against heavily subsidized farmers in developed countries.
And it is this reason that made the 2001 World Trade Organization talks in Doha important to leaders and residents of Africa as they sought to rein in agricultural subsidies in rich economies like the US and the EU. The talks sought to lower trade barriers around the world and add billions of dollars into the world economy through cross-border commerce.
The agriculture negotiations in the Doha round are the ones from which developing countries can derive most gains. Agriculture is particularly important for Africa, considering that the majority of our population depend on it for food, livelihood, and employment.
However, the talks have stalled since 2001, with the US, EU, and Japan wanting the process scrapped or reformed, while developing countries like India, China, and the African states sticking to their guns and calling for the framework to be retained. Experts have warned against the hardening position, saying the protracted talks have birthed a proliferation of regional trade deals outside the purview of the WTO, which undermines the organization's target to be the central instrument for accelerating global trade. Instead, they're calling on the WTO member states to reframe its negotiations to incorporate a more sustainable development agenda. Moreover, they say the US and EU subsidies that were the focus of the Doha round have since been cut, and it is now emerging agricultural subsidies. But speaking during the opening ceremony of the 10th Ministerial Conference in Nairobi on Tuesday, President Uhuru Kenyatta insisted that the Doha round remains critical to the development of African trade. As such, the talks, which have been underway for 14 years, will form a critical theme in the current WTO forum that is underway in Nairobi.
The Doha round of negotiations in agriculture provides us with the best opportunity to address the distortions and to align global trade with our development goals.
The talks will run from Wednesday, December 15th to Friday, December 18th. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
On KTN News, we're going to have an extended conversation about the World Trade Organization 10th Ministerial Conference and also what it means for the least developed countries, or what we call developing countries as well, many of which are on the African continent. And we're going to be extending it into some of the issues we do not understand and also boosting the small and medium enterprises. We have Ambassador Dr. Stephen Karau, who is going to be staying with us for that discussion, and we also have the Managing Director for DHL, who is going to be having that discussion with us. So you can tune into KTN News at 10 p.m. and we'll be having that discussion. We'll now take a look at the financial markets, and we'll see you shortly.
Welcome to KTN Sports. FKF sub-branches that failed to conduct the elections 2 weeks ago finally took to the ballot to elect members in different areas across the country. In Kwale County, Kram Mohammed was declared the winner, with Salim Jumbe going in as his vice. In Mombasa, Shem Lumumba was declared the winner after he garnered a total of 60 votes against his closest challenger, Ali Said's 45 votes to win the youth seat. John Chalo was third with 32 votes. However, some of the opposing teams cried foul, saying some of the clubs which took part in the voting were not mandated to do so.
Delegates wanaangaliwa jina zao, wanaingia ndani, wanapiga kura zao kwa amani kabisa. Yule mtu ambaye anataka usaidizi anapatiwa usaidizi. So far so good. Hakuna shida yote mpaka sasa hivi.
Hatukuweza kuanza saa 3 vile tulikuwa tukataka. Tukaanza saa 4, lakini kutoka hapo tulikuanza mpaka sasa shughuli haijakuwa na shida yote, na mimi nafurahia.
This is KTN News.
Tonight we mourn Ahmed Darwesh, and on the big question tonight we did not ask you our traditional big question. We asked you, what is your message of condolence to Ahmed Darwesh? Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joe said, may the Almighty grant him Jannatul Firdaus, may he rest his soul in eternal peace. Rest in peace, Ahmed Darwesh. King Kaka on Twitter says, my heart goes out to the family and friends of the late Ahmed Darwesh during this difficult period. Mombasa Senator says on Twitter, as I watched the soil fill your grave, I was reminded of your greatness and how short this journey of life is. Rest in peace, Ahmed Darwesh. And Darwesh was a great poet of Swahili. And Mercy Fiona tweets, mauti huja ghafla wala si kwa muhula, mara huwa la haula kayaga dunia. Rest in peace, Ahmed Darwesh. And Dicky Makwero says, our hero never dies, he rests with his spirits always alive with us in the society. You have fought a good race and won Darwesh. And Justo Lugao says, there was only one Darwesh and I'll miss him on KTN Leo. Faith Mugo says, you have left us so soon, Daru, but God knows why. Someone Nganga finally says, today I wept bitterly as I mourned this great icon. He was full of joy, kindness and power. Never met him, but his word remained. I will miss many things about Ahmed Darwesh, and then one of them, and many of our viewers would agree, is the way he used to introduce himself on KTN Leo and Mandhari ya Wiki, saying, wana kwetu wananiita Ahmed Darwesh. Rest in peace, Baba.